So, going to introduce the RIGAAR model. RIGAAR stands for Rapport Building, Information Gathering, Goal Setting, Agreeing a Strategy, Accessing Resources, and then Mental Rehearsal. So, Rehearsal. So that's what all of the letters mean. The idea of the RIGAAR model is it's something for you to follow. It's a nice way of structuring therapy sessions. It's not, things don't have to be done 100% in order, because you're going to be gathering information all the time. So the rapport building, you're going to be gathering information while you're building rapport. It's not like you have to shut your senses off whilst you build rapport and think, no, ignore that, pretend I haven't seen that. You know, if something comes at you, accept it and absorb it. But the idea is that it's a good way of giving you pointers to cover these things. So you want to build rapport, because if you don't have a connection with the person, how are you likely to be able to help them? Because they're not letting you in. You're not in the same, as I would have said right at the beginning, you're not in the same trance as them. You're not in that same space. You're not sharing a world together. So you need that, and we'll go into rapport in just a minute. The information gathering, again, you are going to do throughout. Goal setting, if you don't know where therapy is going, then clearly therapy is just going to go on forever, because neither of you are going to know when it needs to end, or they're going to drop out of frustration because they think this isn't going anywhere because I don't know where it's going. You don't have any idea where it's going, so you don't know whether you've actually made progress or not. Agreeing steps, obviously, again, agreeing a strategy makes sense, because whatever you set out to do, you sort of need to know how you're going to get from A to B. B could be a long way away, and there may be lots that needs to happen before that. So it could be that you quitting smoking. It could be that you've got to learn to relax before you can quit smoking. So one of the steps would be the learning to relax step. But that doesn't mean that someone else has that step. So you need to know what is your strategy with this client, and when we cover that, it's not about getting a very overt strategy necessarily. Some people it is, some people it's, right, so what it sounds like needs to happen is A, B, C, D, and then E will happen. Other people it's more sort of unspoken. You've agreed a strategy, but you haven't really talked about it. It's just in conversation you've sort of, oh, so it sounds like you need to relax, be able to relax for, and then that would help, because if you could relax, you wouldn't get so stressed. And so it's something that's spoken about, but you don't then take a moment to round it all up and say, right, so what we've agreed is, because some people don't like that, they find that very forceful, and I think it's quite nice often to have therapy seeming more like, I think of it as an intelligent conversation. It's like you're being smart with how you're having a conversation. You're not just having a conversation about the weather or about something on TV. You're having a conversation that's got a purpose for the other person, for their benefit and their well-being, not for you. It's not what can I get out of this conversation, which is obviously what most people in conversations are thinking. Most people, when the other person's talking, you're in your head thinking, when they stop talking, I'm going to say this. And you've got an idea of what you're going to say when they shut up. And that's how most conversations go. Most conversations, if they can get you really interested, you may be focused on them. But most conversations are, when they're quiet, what they're saying links to this that I want them to know, or I want to tell them. And most of what we tell people is about us, or gossip about someone else. But we normally come back to about us. Normally it's how they feel about that gossip or something. So after that, it's in the mental rehearsal bit. It's sort of the formal hypnosis stage. So when it gets to mental rehearsal, that's where you're doing if you choose to, you can do mental rehearsal without doing it as formal hypnosis. But given that a lot of people come to you and they come to you for hypnotherapy, so they want to know they've got something that they would call hypnotherapy. So if they come to you and you never get them to close their eyes and you never get them to do what they think is hypnotherapy, they leave thinking, well, I went along and I didn't get hypnotherapy. I got all this therapy, but where was the hypnosis? So sometimes you have to do it, even if you've done brilliant therapy prior to that, you have to do it just for the sake of making them feel good and making them feel like they're getting what they paid for. So the mental rehearsal stage really is using hypnosis in a smart way. So you can use hypnosis in lots of ways. You might use it for pain control, which wouldn't be mental rehearsal. You're obviously using it then in other ways, but mental rehearsal would be where you have them go and practice that future. So it's almost like just saying, all we're going to do now is post-hypnotic suggestion, because that's pretty much what that boils down to. Is we're going to go and set up a whole bunch of stimuluses and responses now. We're just going to go and do a whole lot of post-hypnotic suggestion, but all I'm really going to do is not say, you will now always, I'm going to feed back to you what you've just spent the last 45 minutes or whatever telling me. I'm going to feed that back to you in a way that I know is going to be more therapeutic, and in a way that I know. So it's like, so as we were talking earlier, when you walk out on stage, you're going to be feeling calm and confident, and I don't know, obviously when you know all the hypnotic language, you might bring in things like, and I don't know whether it will be the fact that you've just had your name called and you've just been introduced, or whether it will be the fact that you've just arrived at the venue, or the fact that, so you give a few options, that will be the thing that makes you feel calm and focused and in that zone, or whatever description they gave for the ideal state they want. So you give them a few options, and then you just get them to mentally rehearse it going well. And obviously the research, nearly all research comes from social psychology on these sort of things, but the research is, they did the research with basketball players, where they said, right, you lot, go and play basketball. I want you to practice getting the ball in the hole. Keep doing that over and over again until you can do it right. They said, another lot, we will show you what you need to do. We'll show you how to hold the basketball, we'll show you how to throw it, we'll do all that. And then what we want is you to just mentally rehearse what you've seen. And they had a whole bunch of them just visualise over and over again, practicing doing what they've just watched happen. Those that mentally rehearsed it did better than those that went and practiced for the same period of time. Because those that practiced it for the same period of time did it wrong lots of times, as well as right lots of times. So sometimes they'd miss, sometimes they'd get it in. Those that mentally rehearsed never rehearsed it going wrong. They only ever rehearsed it going in, because that's what they'd been told to do. So that meant that same period of time, they'd actually rehearsed it, they'd actually practiced, and as we've just mentioned about muscle memory and how you respond to these things on a body sort of level, they had practiced it going correctly over and over again, so their body was used to this sort of, that's how you do it, and so they did better than the people who really went to a real basketball court and really threw a ball at a hole. They did worse because they got it wrong as well as getting it right. So mental rehearsal, obviously a lot of this sort of research comes from the sports area. F1 race drivers do the same. They'll stand on the edge of a track with their eyes closed, and they'll imagine themselves doing the perfect lap over and over and over and over again. Every brake, every acceleration, every turning, they'll imagine different ways of having to overtake different people. At what point would you overtake different people? They'd imagine it all, so that when they go and do the real thing, they've already done it a dozen times or 100 times, or when they're way into their career, hundreds and hundreds of times. They've already done it so correctly. So when they come to do it in the real world, it's like, well, this is familiar to me. I know what I'm doing. This is fine. And
I read an article about Michael Phelps, the swimmer, who his coach had him create a mental videotape of him racing that perfect race and winning, and he would, before every race, he would say, Michael, go play the video. And he would go to the side and actually visualize playing a video of him racing this race, exactly the same thing.
The girl that won the skeleton bob in the Winter Olympics, the British girl, when you see her at the start at the top, ready to go down, you can see she's doing this, and she's working it out, and she's knowing where she's going to accelerate, where she's going to slow down. And Linford Christie, the runner, used to say that before he started the race, he'd already finished it because he had run it in his mind. He knew how many paces to the first 20 metres and the second 50 metres and then the final 50 metres. Colin Jackson, the steeple, the hurdler, he would constantly in his mind run, jump, hurdle, run, but he knew it in his mind. He paced everything out. It was all precise. And they say that every muscle that they're going to use in the race is used while they're visualising it, so they don't, and they call it being in the zone, don't they? They're in the zone. They've done it already in their mind before the gun's even gone on.
And I think that's the thing. It's when you look at, and we've obviously had these conversations. When you look at research around hypnosis, everyone focuses on the bits around hypnosis, and then people obviously there's lots of courses out there that teach stuff that doesn't have much backing it. But then when you look outside of the field of hypnosis, you see that stuff related to hypnosis and using hypnosis is actually all there. All the research is there, like in sports psychology or whatever. It's all there. It's just that people don't ever really seem to link the two together. So you've got, obviously, every coach wants their people to do the best, and everyone wants the best coach. So there's a lot of research to go into trying to make people being able to be brilliant at what they do and get to that sort of peak performance level. But then you go and get all this research in that area that nobody ever translates to other areas, and nobody ever links it. And if you go and say, oh yeah, hypnosis can help you to be better at this, that and the other, well, where's the evidence? And then no one ever links it. You rarely see someone present the evidence as saying, well, in sports psychology, there is that happened there, and this happened there, and that happened there. So there's all these things that actually there is evidence there, but they wouldn't call that hypnosis. You know, they've just said, close your eyes and become absorbed in this, whatever it is, this mental video. And so...
And what else is it if it isn't
hypnosis?
hypnosis?
And obviously, if you read what hypnosis is, it always ends up saying hypnosis is a focused state of awareness. Hypnosis is, the deeper in trance you are, the more absorbed you are in that focused state of awareness. And Erickson's view is you can focus your attention on literally anything to go into hypnosis. It doesn't have to be a swinging watch or somebody's finger or whatever. It doesn't have to be things that traditionally people outside of the hypnosis community perhaps associate with what hypnotists do. I used to have a pocket watch just because it was fun, because everyone would say, oh, don't tell me you got a pocket watch that you swing in front of people's face. Well, now you mention it, I do. See? So it was always fun when I was young. It was just a fun thing, because no one expects a youngster to have a pocket watch on them, and so it takes people by surprise, and then it is fun to hypnotise someone with a pocket watch just because you happen to have it there, and it gets attention. Everyone suddenly thinks, that's cool. But yeah, so there's all that research in one field that people don't really notice or talk about in another, and then they don't, because sports psychologists, not all of them obviously, but a large number of them do the research, don't really study hypnosis or know about hypnosis. They've got an opinion of what they think hypnosis is, so they then don't think. It's like when you get people saying, I study mindfulness for using it in CBT and this, that and the other, and they don't know anything about hypnosis. So when you then say, but that sort of relaxation thing you did, where you had them relax their head first, and then you had them relax their arms, and you had them relax their shoulder, their hands and their body and their legs, and it's a lot like the technique in hypnosis where you have someone relax that and you tell them the same thing that they've just done. And they, no, it's not, it's different. But which bit is it? And they can't then tell you what's different about it. They just tell you it's obviously different because it's not that, because I don't do that, because I've never learned that. And so you do get this, you get different fields that actually have, and I think one thing I've always tried to do is find the evidence, find the science behind something, and think, okay, even if it's light science and it's not been researched enough, because obviously mindfulness, for example, has a huge tradition behind it, not as a therapeutic aid, and now they're trying to use something for a different goal to what it's normally obviously been used for, and then they're wanting to do that. Every country nowadays has a bit of a blame culture, and also has insurance companies that pay out on things, and so everyone has to know that you're using stuff that you can say, this is why I chose to use that, here is the evidence for me choosing to use that. So obviously anything like that then does get researched, even though it hasn't been researched, but it's the version, so see, for mindfulness, it's obviously the version that CBT would call mindfulness, not what if you went to sort of a Buddhist monk or something and said, what's mindfulness? What they would tell you wouldn't be what a CBT workbook would tell you. There's obviously overlaps, there's like, letting things pass by rather than becoming attached to them, but the fact that you're using it as a therapeutic technique is more along the lines of what hypnosis is. Michael Yapko says the big difference between hypnosis and traditional meditation is traditional meditation doesn't have a therapeutic goal. It's not goal driven. It's not, I am doing this so that I get that specific outcome of getting better or whatever. It just is what it is. Whereas hypnosis is, I have an outcome that I'm trying to get to, and I need to go through a certain state to go towards that outcome. So his view is that mindfulness, that scientists would say is mindfulness, is no different to hypnosis. We're going to get you into this state that's going to help you to be able to overcome anxiety. It's going to help you to do this or that. It's not going to help you just to be peace and calm and be at one with the world around you. It's not going to do that. It's not going to just help you to be in the moment, even though that is part of why they're choosing to use it. It's actually got a therapeutic direction and goal. But it means that lots of research doesn't get linked together, I think, and I think it's important, which is why I try and mention as much of it on here. It's important to link all this research together and say, look, so when people question you and say, well, I don't believe hypnosis works, what evidence do you have? And you can then say, oh, did you know that people in the sports field do this, this and this? And normally people will say, yeah, I've heard all that. And so you're actually talking in a familiar language to people instead of talking in a language that sounds perhaps airy-fairy and weird, like, oh, people go into this sort of alpha state and this happens to them and that happens to them, and you become really suggestible, and then people think, I don't want to be really suggestible, that means you're controlling me and manipulating me. And so all that it's really hard to, not with everyone, but with some people, to justify hypnosis when you talk in those kind of terms. Whereas if you say, you know how sports people will stand on the edge of a basketball court and imagine themselves playing the perfect game, or they'll stand on the edge of an F1 track before a race, or they'll stand just before the starting block at a race, like running or swimming or whatever. People can relate to that and think, oh, I can imagine they go through that, they imagine it going right, they internalise that bit, they've got this map laid out now for them, and then they go and do it. And so it's trying to talk in a way that says, look, I'm going to take away all the myths, all of the sort of jargon, all of the stuff that you can't relate to, and I'm going to put this in a language that you can relate to. And I think that's really important to do with hypnosis and with therapy as a whole, is let's put this in a language you can understand, not try and teach you a bunch of jargon that you don't believe or that you think will tell me where. Like I went on a training course with it was a psychoanalytic training course, and this links directly into the first thing. The trainer said, right, did you know there's this thing called the ether, and people project how other people feel through the ether. So when you feel anxious, it's because your client wants you to feel anxious, and they've projected that through the ether into you. And I said, oh, isn't that sort of like empathy and using mirror neurons, and you build rapport with someone, and so you start matching them, and because you start matching them and being similar to them, you start taking on the same sort of feelings that they're taking on because you're behaving in the same way as them. No, it's them projecting it psychically through the ether and into you. And I said, well, do you have any evidence to back up that there's an ether and that they're choosing to project this through me? Because it seems more logical that my observations of them and the fact that I then match them because my mirror neurons say, oh, copy this person, because you want to, we're social animals, we like to be like people around us, so copy this person. Is it not more likely that my mirror neurons, based off the feedback of the information that's coming in, make me behave similar to them, and because I behave similar, I start taking on the feelings? So no, that's not what happens. It's the ether. It's you sort of psychically power this thing into them through the ether. And they were adamant theirs were correct, and mine I thought was just more plausible, because mirror neurons have been discovered, and it was accidentally discovered because somebody picked something up in a science lab while they had wires jammed into a monkey's brain, and the monkey's brain fired as if it was picking something up. And the scientist thought, hang on, the monkey hasn't moved. Why is the monkey's brain saying it's picking something up? It's not supposed to be doing that. And then they went and reached for something again, and the monkey's brain did it again. And they realised that every time they moved, the movement they did, the monkey's brain reacted as if it was doing the movement that it was watching the scientist do. And so they thought, well, there's obviously neurons here that are somehow making this monkey behave as if it, almost sort of like giving the monkey the urge to want to do what the person that they're watching is doing. So that's how they discovered mirror neurons, and then they realised that humans do have mirror neurons as well, and that many mammals have mirror neurons, and it all does the same thing. It makes you start to want to behave like other people or other things that are around you. So if things are more nervous, you start wanting to feel more nervous. And obviously, from an evolutionary point of view, that's a very handy thing to have, is whether it's another animal, like another mammal, or whether it's other people in your tribe or whatever, it's very handy to have it that your response to seeing other things getting a bit jittery and nervous is that you also feel that. So whether it's a buffalo out off in the distance and you suddenly notice it looking, not consciously, but something about it just makes you feel uneasy. And we all, I think, probably had this, where you see an animal and something about it just makes you feel a certain feeling, and rather than it being that the animal is psychically somehow sending a message into my brain, it makes more sense that I'm picking up on something non-verbally, like the way it stood, maybe its fur's on end a little bit, or whatever it is. I'm picking up on that, and it's making my brain picking up on that is making me want to actually react and do a similar thing. So it looks fearful, so I suddenly think I feel a bit fearful, and it could be that my interpretation is that dog dangerous because I'm feeling fearful around it. And then it comes to, what is your awareness? If you let yourself be drawn into these things, what's your awareness? Are you fearful of, say, the dog incident? Are you fearful of the dog because it is fearful, and so actually you're just feeling the same because of that? Or are you fearful of the dog because it's actually being aggressive? So then it's another layer of observation, another bunch of things you can observe. Like when you're with a client, has a feeling just happened within you because of the client, or has that feeling just happened within you in response to the client, or is it completely independent of the client? You've just thought of something, like what you're going to do in the evening, and that's just made it, and that's the thing that's caused it. So it's more observation, and we're going to stop for some lunch, and then we're going to do rapport.
If you enjoy this, find it helpful, just subscribe below, and please leave a comment and give it a thumbs up.